I'm here with Kate Walling. Kate, welcome to the Marketing Study Lab podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I want to dive straight in today, as usual, with a random opener. And your random opener is, in your opinion, what is the most priceless work of art in the world?
Oh, that's a hard one. Oh, the most priceless work of art in the world. Oh, Peter, you stumped me.
Okay.
It's not the banana glued to the wall that's sold for an incremental amount at Art Basel in Miami this year. I can tell you what it's not.
Okay, that's brilliant. Yeah, you mean the banana that was taped to the wall that they kept changing the banana as it got older?
As it got older and people were buying them, and it was
Yeah.
simply like 2 pieces of duct tape.
I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, yes. Have you got a favorite piece of art?
I don't. I've got a favorite type of art, and that is I really like social pieces about social reform.
Okay.
And pieces of art that there's a movement, obviously, whenever there's frustration around like women's movements and reform, and those are the pieces that really speak to me.
Cool.
So it's kind of more of a subject matter than a particular artist. I really like very scrappy artists. So the artists that work day in and day out, just like us entrepreneurs, right?
Love it. Love it. Like it. Okay, let's get into all this marketing stuff. But before we dive into some actionable tips, and today we're going to discuss the 5 biggest things that you feel will impact our social and marketing in 2020, which is fantastic. I just want to know your story, the background that brings you to this point in your career, and then what you're up to right now.
Okay, perfect. I'll try to give you the short version because, like any good entrepreneur, my story is a journey full of twists and turns.
Brilliant, love it.
I started one of my first jobs was working for a online wedding registry in the early 2000s, late 90s, and it was selling advertising. And this was like the very archaic, like directory pages in HTML and calling local businesses and getting them on board. And I saw this huge potential with the internet and where it was going. And so I decided to start my own startup and went and got some tech classes to understand how to do that. And that was a consumer based startup where people could make their own cookbooks, and it synced in with the same printing conglomerates that handle Shutterfly and iPhoto photo books. And I did really well with that. I was very young, started at around 23, and there was no social media. And so I started, I think being young is such an advantage, I realize now. I figured out that being Southern, I could get on any news show that had a second hour and cook and then plug the cookbooks. And this did really well, and I ended up in some of the largest markets in the United States. Wow. And ended up acquiring customers in almost every state, and with over 40,000 recipes that users had submitted, and a lot of active customers. So I did really well. I just ran out of money in 2008 when the banks closed, which was unfortunate for all of us. So after that, I started a digital and branding marketing agency in Seattle and grew that business quickly. It was a great time where people needed a la carte marketing services and branding services. And honestly, we just had a really great team and a great time. But I started feeling, as I was growing that agency quickly, I started feeling that I had a little lack of knowledge because I'd never had corporate experience.
Okay.
And I started kind of craving to work in a corporate tech company, both because of my previous experience and then this lack of understanding kind of how do these employee situations play out and how do you structure teams, how do you handle bad news. And so I actually closed the agency and moved to Silicon Valley and helped run marketing for Think Near by Telenav, which was a mobile advertising platform, location-based mobile advertising. and learned a ton there, and was really grateful for the team for putting up with my entrepreneurial ways. And did that for 3.5 years, and just learned some of the challenges of Silicon Valley, larger companies, and what it's like to be a public company and what that means for marketing. And now I'm back to advising startups. I advise startup CEOs and their marketing leadership team on their strategy. I also help with what I call scrappy execution. So how do we get things done quickly, with traction, and really well? And that is lending into me building Traction Hero, which is another agency model similar to the one that I built in Seattle, but I'm really working on a much more scalable model.
Wow, that's cool. I love the fact that
Sorry for the long story.
No, that's absolutely perfect. We've had longer. We've had a lot shorter as well, believe me. And they can be that can be a struggle when that happens. But no. All joking aside, I love the fact that you went sort of from entrepreneurial back into corporate because you felt there was you might have a passion for something or a passion to learn a particular thing, and the only way to do that is to dive right in and then take it back into that entrepreneurship that you wanted to do, which is fantastic. Love it.
Well, thank you. Some of the best advice, I've attended some Silicon Valley accelerators, and they're very, very difficult programs. But the one thing they tell the entrepreneurs there is you really can't say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur for life. You have to be flexible, and you have to realize that in order to fund that and to keep yourself fluid and to learn the skills you need, there will be times that you'll be in-house. There'll be times that you're corporate. And I think that's some of the best advice I ever walked with in terms of Silicon Valley entrepreneurship.
That's cool. And it's so easy to think like you've got to be a certain way, you've got to act a certain way, you've got to do a certain thing, and that's set in stone, particularly when you're young. And I suppose that goes down to education and things like that. But it is a huge case that, it's okay having a goal and a massively achievable goal, or even if it's way out there, fantastic. But that path to get there can change so much. And like you say, bang on, you have to be flexible with these things.
Yeah, and it's the same for marketing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess really anything career-wise these days, but for marketing and in particular, you've got to be fluid. You've got to be agile and learning new skills and constantly, which we're so lucky to have you, who explains things so well and helps people.
Yeah, I'd like to say that's a skill I've learned, but I think it's just more having a tiny brain that I have to make things dead simple, and lo and behold, people kind of understand that and resonate with it, which is cool.
You're very good at it.
So what I want to do today, you kindly said that you would discuss the 5 biggest things that will impact social media and marketing during 2020, which is fantastic. Great opportunity, and fantastic for everybody listening to get the pen and paper out and jot these down and really do their research into these areas, because they're fundamental to what we all do, and it can be really good foundations for 2020 and onwards. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you. I'll dip in and answer questions, but Kate, if you'd like to take it away with your 5 biggest things that will impact social media and marketing in 2020, fantastic.
Okay, awesome. So I made a solid list for you and thought through, and they're kind of in order. So the first one, I think, is you really can't bet on social advertising like you used to be able to.
Okay.
Especially when I owned my agency in Seattle, it was awesome. Like, they would roll out a new ad format. I remember the night they rolled out mobile advertising and didn't warn us, and our budgets just got shot for this mobile unit we didn't even know was going to happen. But they were super effective ad units, and we could really, use that for an entire strategy of what is the goal and what's the ad that will get us, that will make that happen. And that's not the case. And the area that this is, I think, affecting the most are D2C, direct to consumer companies, because it used to be that they could do a pretty solid, Facebook or Instagram or both, ad, and that would deliver. But the cost of the advertising has gotten so expensive that there's just no safety net there. And companies are really going to have to start looking at a more variety in their marketing strategy and advertising strategy, and embracing some kind of old school type of strategies. I know a lot of Silicon Valley D2C companies, we get a lot of direct mail from them. So they're starting to embrace direct mail. And I don't think that's happening as much in other parts of the country, but we're always a good test market. So that's a big one.
Do you think that's to stand out? Because obviously the competition on social platforms is increasing daily, depending on what platform you look at. And then going back more traditional, it's a good way of standing out, really. And as long as you do it right and the execution's correct.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Inboxes are full of email. I would never tell anyone to give up their email strategy. It's too important. But it's taking a more diverse strategy that are incorporating, like you're saying, traditional methods that people kind of abandoned to go where there's less competition. And the same thing in the B2B space, events are super important. Just like in the B2C space, your influencers are still important, which is another thing that's changed on social, is that these micro influencers are harder to find, and Instagram's making changes to where you can't identify them, but they're still important. But I think it's overall just a much more diversified plan. It's whenever there's a moment in time in marketing, and Peter, I'm sure you'd agree, where something's working really well, it is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the important thing to remember is that it's a moment in time, and you may have lucked out, and that's going to end.
Yeah.
So I think on the social ads, we've come to an end on that one, being a guaranteed strategy.
Yeah. But I mean, those learnings that you do have from social ads or anything that's worked in the past for you, like you said, if you ride that wave, you can always take those learnings on to the next thing, and you should do, although it's probably going to be completely different, the execution behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like what you're saying, like you'll learn stuff. You'll learn more about exactly what that demographic that responds is, what the expectation is, and you just apply that in a different channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
Okay, you ready for number 2?
Oh, yes.
Okay, the second tip is that content expectations have gotten very high, but there's no guaranteed channel on that either. And it used to be, so back in my days of ThinkNear, for a good example is the marketing team, we kept the Instagram channel really fun and hip. And it was just fun, easy kind of team pictures. And the purpose of that channel really helped with recruiting. We were a young startup small startup unit of a public company, and that attracted a lot of great young talent. And so, looking like a fun company was important, and we were a fun company, so it was very easy to do. And, you could kind of take photos and schedule them, and that was cool. Now you've got these like disappearing stories that are super visual and video and less planned, and it's really a lot for startups especially to be able to handle. And the good thing is that there are a lot of tools like Canva that help you have designed posts and help you up your bar in a pretty easy way. But it is taking more time on the execution front to do that. And at the same time, there is no guaranteed channel, and marketing teams you can't just be like, I'll be on every channel, because that's too time consuming. So you need to kind of choose what you're doing and why, and what is the strategy and what are we trying to achieve. Be willing to change it, but then work on that look and feel, reaching a high bar, because that's kind of what's expected. Especially in B2C, bar is really, really high right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thankfully, the good thing is there's starting to be a lot of products to help. Like, I ordered a Amazon pop-up photo booth that has lighting and backdrops, and and it's really cheap. It's like an Amazon basic product. You're welcome, Amazon. And there are other little agencies popping up that will help, recruit models to help you with the photographs and other kind of inexpensive ways. If you're doing anything where that's fashion oriented or something where it's got to be really perfect. So the good news is there's solutions coming, but that is pretty hard for marketers, I think.
So in terms of what you do and your clients, have you seen a particular type of content work very well? Or is there a particular type of content that you would say, this is the style we need to be focusing on right now?
It really depends. I have seen clients who are too stuck on a certain style. So they'll want like young models literally in all of their Instagram. They only want really beautiful people. And first of all, you know, most of us don't relate to that.
Except us
or really
too.
beautiful homes,
you know.
right? I know, except for the two of us. Right? You know, it's kind of like the Peloton dilemma of really beautiful people and really beautiful homes. And it's like, you know, I think some marketers feel that people aspire for that, and so it fits. But then there's a huge amount of people who just don't relate to it. And so I think it's that. It depends per brand, really. I think you always want to try to find a way to be engaging. And doing that really genuinely in a way that works is hard, especially when it's gotten really hard on Facebook and Instagram for businesses to even get traction on their pages, right? Like there's just, you're going to have to promote or something like that. So I'd say there's no particular note that I have that's broad. I would just say, the one thing I would say is it's important to find the tools to help you. So that you can come up with a strategy that's doable long-term, because some people just end up falling off, or they end up with really bad content, and you don't really want to end up on either one of those extremes. So what's doable, and what are the tools that are going to help you get it done that are reasonable?
Cool. I like it that those two things, you know, don't go on beyond the realms of impossibility when you start to create this content, because it needs that consistency, but also utilize what's out there. You know, there's so many tools, and you mentioned Canva, but there's so many others to help you be more efficient, not just more efficient, but have that structure in your content as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, use your tools, which is the name of the game in marketing right now.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but don't use too many that you just can't cope. That's you know,
right, exactly.
They come from every single angle, and it's like, whoa, okay, I can't use all of these all the time. Just, you know, get good at a select few.
So true. Which so properly brings us into number 3, Peter. You
Magic.
set me up so well. Is that there's this ever-growing stack of MarTech solutions, and there's so many that marketers can't possibly have the time to evaluate them. And so you always have this major FOMO that like there's some tool that you're missing out on, or are you choosing the right tool? And then figuring out the integrations, you feel like you're going to overlook something. And then you're worried because some, you know, the larger products have very expensive contracts, and you're locked in for a year or two. And, you know, I think in general, career duration is, you know, each job duration is changing to be lower. In Silicon Valley, it's like 18 months. So if you're going to build a team around Marketo or Pardot, and that team's going to change, and then you're locked into this tool. I mean, it's difficult. You have to hire against that tool. And it's also difficult because for startups in the early phase, you're just doing all you can from a marketing perspective to see what works and get all the kinks worked out and the product delivered. And when you get that figured out and you've kind of got proof of concept, proof of market, you're moving into, okay, how do we scale this and operationalize? Well, those are 2 completely different sets of tools. And they're usually 2 different teams. They're different people. And so I think that this is a really hard one for marketers. And the other thing that I'm noticing is the tools that are there that we use keep adding more features. So then you're constantly evaluating, well, then do I need this other tool or not? And then a lot of the really good AI is coming in completely separate tools. So let's say you've got HubSpot or some sort of larger product for email marketing, CRM, but then there's this one tool that does amazing AI in terms of deliverability, in terms of subject matter, and they kind of integrate, but not great. That's another frustration that we have, and it can be pretty stressful. So I think marketers have to do the best they can try to not get locked into long-term agreements. Make sure that it's going to be easy enough to move over, and make sure the solutions you choose will last you like at least 12 to 24 months, if you can.
Yeah, sure.
You know, if it's something data reliant, if it's something not data, if it's Canva or something, no worries. You can just cancel it. But if it's something that you're putting all your data into, you need to make sure you can pull that data out pretty easily.
Yeah, and a good analogy there. Love a good analogy, but a good analogy there for me would be Apple and the iPhone. And if you're going to go down that route, love Apple. Like, nice plug for Apple. Not that they need it, but there you go. Is that you get a new iPhone and you literally hover it over the other iPhone, keep it close to it, and it transfers all the data and all the information, seamless as that. But if I wanted to go to Android or a different phone, I've never tried it, and I don't think I want to, not yet anyway, but I can imagine how hard that could potentially be.
I think that's a great analogy, because there's the learning curve, there's the training of your team, and then there's this huge data migration. And all the while, you've got to keep all your marketing intact and going out, right?
Yeah.
So that part's pretty stressful right now, and I don't think that's going to be resolved anytime soon.
No.
The best thing is to use tools to help you evaluate, to do your evaluation as well as you can, and plan as well as you can. I think that's really the only way around it.
Yeah, and make sure you use the free trials as well. If there's no free trial, they're hiding something. Because
yeah, you're so right. The free trial is critical, and understanding the pricing model too. Is it per seat or per email? Or thankfully, most of these tools are pretty generous. But that's, I think for the free trial, it's also just to try several products. Not just the one that you're most interested in. Trying several, because you really don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you get in there and see what you need. So that was a little dark. Apologies for that. But the next one, the good news about the MarTech stack getting larger, and this one I'm really excited about, although it is the same issue a little bit, but CRMs are changing, and I love this. We're starting to see a tiny glimpse of startups using more than one CRM, depending on the function, and then figuring out how to cross that data over. And the reason I love this is because you've got different types of sellers. You've got, typically early on in a startup, you're getting relationship sellers on board, people that can go in there and they know people and they're going to be able to sell quickly, right? Well, as you operationalize and you scale, you need super tech savvy salespeople. You need inside sales reps who are helping to qualify leads on the sales side. And it is just a different CRM. A lot of traditional sellers, it's very hard to get them to use any CRM at all. And Salesforce is very cumbersome for them, although very helpful, because some of the dashboards that can be created in Salesforce are invaluable. But for, someone who's a tech savvy seller, or they're doing phone calls all day long, they really need some of these newer CRMs that have predictive dialing. They have one-click voicemails. They just empower you to knock that portion out much more easily.
Wow.
And so when I talk to clients, I'm really trying to understand and have them open their minds a little bit, because it's scary, right? But to say, it's okay to look at two different CRMs and to see what the use case is. And there are ways, and there's so many little technologies to help carry things over right now, that it's okay. It's something to consider, because the last thing you want to do is make something hard on your sales team or prevent efficiency on your sales team.
Yeah.
Anything direct to ROI.
Would those CRM systems be connected and talk to each other, or would it just be the input of data, which is, you're not duplicating what you're having to do on two different systems?
So what you do is, I think you usually are going to have one main CRM that marketing is going to pull from. you can use another CRM. So let's say in the example of you need a CRM that's better for, you've got like 20 or 30 inside sales reps, and you need them to have all these call features that are just super helpful. You can take the data that goes into that and have them stay in that product. And then you can write there's some Zapier, and there's some other products that will write some of that stuff over to Salesforce.
Oh, cool.
So it's just having someone tech savvy enough to write those rules. But to prevent somebody, you don't want to put someone in a tool that's really uncomfortable for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the same for marketing. So for marketing, Salesforce is great, and we need that data, and that's what, can be the hub, just like any other CRM can be for the sales team. But you don't want to hinder the marketing team with a certain CRM. And so the marketing team will also choose a technology that's going to work best for them, and then just works well in terms of relaying that information over. So it can get complex, and you can see why this can be a pain in terms of migration later.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to basically build it according to what the business goals are and what they will be. So if you've got one inside sales rep and you're just testing that to see, will it work? It's okay to have them work within whatever your main CRM is.
Mm-hmm.
But if that strategy starts working and you're going to start adding inside sales reps, then you're going to want to start adding a CRM that's going to work better and more efficient for them. So I think just look kind of long-term and map it to your business goals. But that I'm very excited about, because CRMs are so hard for marketers. And our team at the end of the day is to make things easier for sales. It just, that's important.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that, one, you're excited about that, and two,
it's probably weird.
No, not at all. Love it. It's not weird if you see your background either on video, because that kind of even looks like you're even into more scientific elements than you actually are, which is fantastic. But
That's true.
The other reason that I'm really pleased you mentioned it is the fact that it almost highlights this problem that marketers are always faced with. And that's the fact that we need to be across a lot of different disciplines and know and understand very different areas. But when people outside marketing are discussing that with us, they almost expect you to be the wizard on that particular thing, where it's well, unless you're a genius, and I'm certainly not, but it's almost impossible to have that level of knowledge across all those different disciplines to be an advisor 100%. You need everybody to be on board with things like that for it to work.
You really do. And I think, when you're from a startup perspective, when you're looking for someone to help you, right? So you're going to hire like a new digital marketing manager or something. If you don't have technology yet, so what you're looking for number one is curiosity. Someone who's very curious about what are the problems and how can we fix it? Wonder how this thing works, and wonder how we could do this better. And then, I guess as important as curiosity is capability, but you want to look less for this specific skill set, whereas large corporations or larger startups that have a lot more revenue and they're scaling, they have already bought into certain software stack, and they generally need someone to come in and do that. But to me, curiosity is just key for this type of work, and flexible thinking. It's just finding someone that's, scrappy. Basically.
Yeah, I love that, and I'd never thought of it like that, but it's so true. Particularly if you're going into an organization which is relatively new to marketing, which in the UK isn't uncommon, believe me. But it's a case of you're hiring people for the now, whereas in our industry, things move so quickly that it's more like you said. I love that about the curiosity and the passion somebody has for that particular subject than it is about what you can offer on maybe Facebook or Twitter or an SEO or SEO or whatever it might be. It's like, what's going to happen in 16 years ago, I think it was, Facebook didn't exist. So if you were employing somebody that you wanted to employ long-term, how can you make that decision on what's going to be the next big thing? They're not using it yet.
It's true. And it's hard. It's like I had talked to a marketer who was taking a sabbatical. And they were talking about how, just out of curiosity, they downloaded TikTok, and they were having all these observations about how TikTok is used by creators, and just they were starting to get curious about how would brands even be received on TikTok, right? If they did really professional content, because that's not what TikTok is about. And it was just so fun. It was such a fun conversation, because in our day-to-day lives, if you're running a really large marketing team or have a hugely responsible job, you don't have time to do things like that. And so it's refreshing if you can take a sabbatical to where you have time to have curiosity, but very few of us can do that. Or B, you want to hire people who are thinking that way, because, you know, it goes back to the first and second tip, are like, these things don't stay this way for very long at all.
Yeah.
And it's typically someone who has an idea from something they noticed just out of curiosity that can find like your next successful strategy. And so I think that's important. And it seems to be one of the number one things that when I'm looking to hire that I look for.
Love that.
Just curiosity.
Brilliant. So on to the fifth and final biggest thing that's going to impact us this year.
Okay. Now, this sounds really boring when it comes out of my mouth, but it's privacy.
We probably should have started with this and then built up, shouldn't we?
We probably should have, because it just sounds so boring. But if we let's make it not boring. Because,
yeah, of course.
And I'm not an attorney, but the reality is that last year marketers were dealing with the changes of GDPR and updating website privacy policies, making sure that people had proper opt-in. And California, just starting January 1st, released their own privacy law and expectations. Now, the ones for California typically don't hit till a startup is larger. But what's important is to be thinking about this, because, of course, I'm biased because I live in California, but California does tend to set the precedent for the rest of the states for these things. And it's important. You know, you and I were talking about, before we hopped on the call, kind of how do we feel about privacy and being marketers. And I think it's something that we're starting to think a lot more about, because people want to know, and in our own lives, we want to know. We want to have control over how our data is used. As you mentioned, if you subscribe to an email list and you unsubscribe, you really don't want to receive it anymore. And if you continue to receive it, you have a bad brand impression.
Yeah.
So I think being cognizant of this and thinking through, what if someone wants to unsubscribe, and making sure they're unsubscribed from all lists? How is that handled? Like, what if someone wants to delete our app for good and be removed for good? How is that operationally handled? You know, that often falls on the marketing team, and I think it's something to think about. I think, you know, we were in the days of, and the new book Uncanny Valley explains this very well.
Okay.
We're in the days with marketing where there's all this cool technology, and we could see what everyone was doing on everything and where they were, and, you know, all this information. And now there's starting to be a little bit more, and from a marketing standpoint, you're like, wow, this is amazing. I can do so much stuff with this. But now we're kind of more in a time of like, oh, that's really cool. Should I use that? Or how should I use that responsibly? Or there's like a little bit more mindfulness. And I think that that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that was the key word. Using it responsibly is the key word. So I always say when I'm teaching privacy and GDPR laws in a workshop, I always say, you'll have 3 or 4 slides in it, and I'll just say, it can be quite easily put down to, don't be an idiot. It's as simple as that. You've got somebody's data, just don't be an idiot with it. And I think it's almost cyclical in a way that we've got all this data, too much data to handle. And now we have these laws that say, well, you can only hold so much data on somebody. And in a way, the way to look at that is that it cleanses your data, so that when you are either doing campaigns, creating funnels, getting in contact with people, it's a cleaner set of data and resources than you had previously, which, rather than looking at it negatively, that there's all these laws around it and it's stopping us contacting people, it isn't. It really isn't. It gives you an opportunity to do the right thing and clean up that data. Whether people actually care whether you have their data or not is another matter and another argument, but it just gives that opportunity for you to have the right set of data in front of you.
You couldn't have said it better. I mean, people should listen to your class on this. That's another thing about it is often marketers, this is a topic that doesn't come up much. I happen to be in an area where their law firms put on these wonderful free events, and I'm very lucky in that way. And so I attended one about this, and it was so helpful just to hear kind of, attorneys' takes on it, but also just how to think about it operationally from a marketing perspective. And so, I think it's one of those things that if it's a topic you don't know about, because most of us don't know much, maybe educate yourself and start thinking about it, because it does feel a little better as a marketer to feel, that this is something to be cognizant of and to build with. I think it's kind of like being an active recycler.
Yeah, I like that. Really cool. Excellent.
Makes you feel a little bit better about yourself. So.
Yeah, you can sleep a little bit easier at night.
Exactly.
Excellent. So, Kate, we've come to the point in the chat where I like to ask some quick fire questions to finish, if that's okay.
Of course.
Brilliant. Okay, first one is, what's that source of information you can't live without? Where do you go for your information?
Okay, so this sounds funny, but it's called The Information. There is a media outlet they're in San Francisco, run by Jessica Lesson, and they keep the Silicon Valley informed about what's happening within companies, important issues. There's just really no resource like it, and it's literally called The Information.
I
so
love
that is my top source.
That is brilliant. It's like, it doesn't get cleaner than that, does it? The Information. It's
so true. Absolutely. I have my Feedly full of other, marketing and branding and design feeds. But when it comes to really important startup news, that's where I look.
The Information. Love it. Okay. What was the last thing you remember Googling?
The last thing I ended up Googling, I think it was sadly like dog beds for my office puppy.
It's brilliant. I love that. Dog beds. Like it. Moving on.
Keep in mind, it's early. It's moving Pacific time. On a professional level, it was probably around, I've got a market research project that I'm working on. And there's, again, this ever-growing stack of market research tools and different panels and how you can plug into them. So on a professional, non-dog bed related thread, it was definitely around market research and the tools and panels available now. It keeps growing.
Okay, yeah, cool. I think we'll stick with the dog bed one though.
Okay, it's up to you, Peter.
If you could tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Always listen to your gut.
Oh, like it. I hear that more and more now, which I love. Absolutely brilliant, superb. I read somewhere. Do you know when you feel hungry, you feel it in your tummy and you feel it in your brain? And I was told that it's either muscles or it's cells, but there's the same, if not similar, cells in your tummy as in the brain. And that's why they call it like hunger pains and loads of other things. And that's why when they say, when I got that gut feeling, that's the other way around. So it's almost like your tummy muscles are your brain in a way. I could be completely wrong. Someone will email and say that is rubbish.
I love your encyclopedic knowledge. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's true in marketing and in all things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Okay. So what's the most important thing to know about marketing right now?
It's changing every day.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is the most important thing. Excellent.
Yeah.
Final most important question, Kate. If people want to find you, find out what you're all about, what you do, where should they go?
They should check out katewalling.com, and there are links there to all of my social media. And then on tractionhero.com, which is the small agency that I'm building, initially small and then hopefully scalable. There's not much information there. However, there is one page that has some very important white papers on it that basically my team has analyzed some of this stuff for you. So CRM tools, email marketing tools, marketing automation tools, and website development tools. There are papers free papers for all those where we say what are the current hot tools, and then we compare them and put the pricing information. And also we have integration checklists for each tool.
Oh,
so
wow.
if I can save marketers any trouble, then that's what I want to do, because I need to know that information myself. And then I thought, well, here world.
That's brilliant.
If that helps in any way, I would hope. But that's the least that I can do right now in terms of helping this MarTech headache problem.
That's fantastic, and I'll put all the links in the show notes, so it's easy to find. It'll be at the top of the show notes. Kate, thank you so much for joining me today. Absolute pleasure talking to you. So fascinating, so interesting. Loved it.
Thank you. Thanks for having such an awesome marketing podcast for everybody to stay up to date.